right, so I have something absolutely game-changing on the studio table today. A lot of you guys may have never seen something like this before. Not the JK Max. I'm not discussing this CAPO Jeep that you guys saw me build several months ago, but one of the innovations for it that CAPO has recently released and revealed to us is the AiRMATiC. Look at this. This is an actual compressor that's going to control air-driven shocks. So you heard me right. They've actually made a compressor that can pump air in and release air out of shocks. I know, take a moment to absorb that, because I haven't even begun to have an idea of what we could be using this for in the RC industry apart from the shock setup here, which is definitely necessary. One of the things with this CAPO JK Max Jeep was because it is 13.5 pounds, if you don't have the proper suspension in here, the stock suspension that comes with it, or in my first kit actually was quite soft, right? So I was seeing a lot of sag on my suspension. Well, always being innovators and always like changing the game, upping the game, CAPO has come out with a brilliant design, and I get to show it to you here. Yep, cautions. Here it is. What you're looking at is a 1/8 scale, I guess because they qualified their truck as an 8 scale, compressor and shock system. I'm going to take each one of these out and show them to you as we go. Here we are, the CAPO AiRMATiC. This has a plunger on the top here to accept air and to move it in and out. And then all four of those are the same. And then of course the centerpiece. Look at this. I know a lot of you guys are jaw dropped right now. Some of you may have seen this on Facebook because they were talking about it about a month ago, but I'm one of the first folks to have it here. And I figured you guys would want to have an up-close look. There's 2 ports right here, 3 on the back, another 2 right there. And it's going to plug in to a harness that's actually underneath here. So there is a good shot of it right there. Might I add, this is all metal, all alloy and rubber you can see there. It adds about another ½ a pound, I would say, on just an estimate. Of course, there's the remote, the harness and the tubing, and all 4 of the shocks. They've actually made this compressor to fit on this back electronics tray. The lid itself is going to become the platform. In fact, I'm going to remove this 1 screw, slide this whole lid out, and remove these 2 top stacks so I can affix the entire compressor right to the top. So it's going to be nice and out of the way. I absolutely love this part in the instructions. The AiRMATiC host is integrated into a micro air compressor, all kinds of valves and other sophisticated parts, and no testing is needed. If there is not any breakdown, please do not randomly take it apart in order to prevent the parts from being lost and damaged. So fair warning, hey? If you want to get in there, be prepared. You may never get it back together. So I'm using a 1.5 mil hex driver to remove and back off these screws. Perfect. All right, so here you can see I have mounted it up with the screws on the top. They did want these button head screws underneath here, or pardon me, the cap head screws. I think it's to kind of keep this little bit of screw maybe from damaging your wires, so they're being diligent about that, but I actually like the fact that I can access all 3 screws on top. I also went ahead and put the feeder tube from the main into the 2 outlets on here. I did have to use a little bit of my magic on there to try to get them in because this tube is very tight, but I was able to do that. So next step really is to mount up the plugs, get the lid back on the top, and then move into the shocks. So before I close it up, it dawned on me that I'd want to show you guys the electronics. You'll see that two of those white plugs went into this dual port into a single wire. The wire comes out into the control board. The control board also had another port that you could hook up right from the main right here. All this comes down into the control board out to a power wire. So this isn't an open channel on your receiver. This is basically where your bind or your battery plug could go on your receiver. So usually that's open unless you guys are running light kits on yours or something like that that's using that plug, in which case you could use a Y harness and bring those two together because it's really just power, right? So this will work. Now everything is set up with that radio and it should be easy to pop on and install. Let's have a nice up close look at this shock. This is something that, you know, a lot of us have never seen before, and I got to give a thumbs up to the innovation at CAPO. They're always bringing us new and great things that we've never really thought of before, or we thought of but could never really make happen. Look at the bottom of this. This isn't a normal eyelet, okay? This is actually on, normally we'd see the end of the shaft and we'd have something that screws onto that shaft, and we do have that, but it's completely different. Notice inside there's nothing at the bottom. There is a giant bladder in there, I believe. When I pull it all the way out, you can see the rubber that pops up to the top. I'm going to go ahead, unscrew this. You'll see that instead of unscrewing from the top where I would normally fill the oil, I undo this and there is a green little balloon there. Inside here, I want to have this pushed down. I'm going to take my oil, and then once it's full of oil, draw it up to get those air bubbles out. Now in the picture it shows, you guys can see I got a little bit of overspill here, not a big deal. In the picture it actually shows that they fill it up to about halfway here, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not really used to this shock, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to do that. And then it said make sure to cycle the shocks a few times, get those air bubbles out. I'm going to wait for the air bubbles to come out, and then I'll disassemble it like this. So on the front end of the truck, I'm going to release that top spring for the coiled shock. Remove this one out of here. Take the other shock. Make sure that the air nipple is facing backwards. And then just mount that up in the same spot. Once that's in place, I can go ahead and put the tire back on. You'll see the JK Max is much lower now. Much lower with a non-sprung shock, so everything is compressed. Okay, with all 4 shocks installed, you can see the stance is actually very low. I've actually gone ahead already and hooked up the tubing. You'll see here's that rubber tube. This is what I have left when I'm done. And then I've already hooked up all the tubes to the outlets on both sides, and I'm running a short one here to this side and another one up to the front on this side. I haven't hooked the tube in yet because here it is. Really, really neat concept. I can't believe that they brought this to the table. An actual air ride system. So right down to the ground, I've got no suspension flex right now, I'm sure, unless I was just crawling over stuff. And the only thing for me to do is to power it up and have a look. Now, a lot of people are going to be asking me right away, can you control front and back or left and right? And you really have to choose one or the other. It's the way you do the tubing. And so I've chosen to go and be able to lift up my left-hand side or my right-hand side, or both together to raise the ride to help me with my side hilling, because a very heavy truck it is for sure, and I want to have the ability to level myself out. Now, you can also do it where you roll forward or roll backwards. What do I mean by that? Well, it's either lift front or back in sequence. So you can either choose one or the other, and I chose to go left and right. All right, everything is good to go for the first test, and lift up this side. Yes, the other side. Sweet. And then down. Now, if I wanted to lift all 4 simultaneously, I'd push button C. And there is your lift. And now it's a very firm suspension. You'll notice right here, I've got nice and, like it's an air ride shock. And Doesn't really roll that much, but look at the ride height I have on that now. Incredible, guys. Wow. So some keeners may have noticed already, if you turn, I'm going to turn my tire here so you can see, I actually am running a sprung shock in the front, which is kind of a fib because I was showing you I was running this dampener instead, but I didn't realize that I forgot back in the day I wanted to run mine in droop, so I didn't put any internal spring in there. Now, without the internal spring, which gives a little bit of resistance, I found that the shocks on the front had a hard time lifting up under the air pressure. If I would have done it with my fingers and just lifted it up, it would have stayed in place. So off camera, I quickly swapped these ones out and took all of the pre-tension off of my coil perch up here and made it nice and soft. And then if I just hold it on, it kind of lowers everything down. If I'm driving, it gets even lower. Okay, let's raise it both at the same time. So that is a considerable lift change there, right? Wonderful. If I wanted to go just on this side, even it out. If I'm side hilling and I really needed it, I can now even it out a little bit. And of course, if I want out, I just have to push the release button. What an amazing technology, guys. CAPO always blowing my mind.